All right, hello, Stephen. How is it going, man?
Hi Otto, good to see you.
Good to see you again. So, Stephen, could you please introduce yourself and a little background about you, what you do, and maybe even how we met, what we do. So let's start. Let's get started.
So I'm one of Otto's clients from a few years back when I lived in Dublin. I now live in Edinburgh, and I suppose during the lockdown, the gyms were shut. So I Otto and myself, had a conversation, and basically the discussion was I asked him to virtually train me, and that I would buy some rudimentary equipment for home use because, obviously, as the months go by, you can't put your health regime on hold for long periods of time. So, I suppose we're talking about how to keep healthy in lockdown, and I suppose the mental health and the physical side of it, and especially when there's a disturbance like the gyms shutting,
Oh
for
yeah,
example.
especially you are in Scotland and the gyms were closed since March till I think first September opened. So there was
Yeah,
like,
and then when you went there, it was kind of like, my local gym has, a lot of air conditioning and, refiltered air, and you're just thinking this is a disaster from a viral spread point of view.
yeah.
So, but my background is I'm a scientist. I basically develop kind of new cell therapeutics, like from stem cells. So my background is scientific in nature, and I think studied things like virology, the study of viruses, and epidemiology, which is the I suppose the science of how disease spreads
Hmm.
in at third level, and that kind of feeds the context with which how it's how I see COVID, and it's a waiting game, and personally speaking, I think we'll be out of the woods, out of the serious disruption that we're in probably by April
Hmm.
next year. But obviously, that's 5 months away or whatever, and it's
Why
about
would that be? Do you think there will be the cure? Well, cure the vaccine, obviously, or
well, I think
what do you
the
suggest?
key thing is we're going into flu season right now,
So
right?
the
And
numbers will come up anyway.
yeah, well, when it gets cold, people are indoors more, and when you're indoors more, it's easier to spread the virus.
Yeah,
And there's also mental and physiological consequences of staying indoors all the time.
like
If
lack
you
of sunshine, lack of vitamin D3,
vitamin
and
D is very
therefore the
important,
immune system.
or you just not taking as much exercise, and your body gets not
Yeah,
as efficient.
yeah.
Or and well, basically colds, flu, and just the general stress of the winter period, make you more susceptible to catching COVID, and also, you're stuck inside with the TV and the radio as well, which is also kind of like it can have an effect on your mental well-being as well if you listen to too many opinions. I
News
mean,
overdose, right?
yeah, well, like for the news or the information I take in on a daily basis are a number of cases in my area, and there's one very good YouTube video where basically this medical school teacher, like basically a guy who teaches med students full time, he does a blog and basically goes through studies that are ongoing, and
Hmm.
he's very clear, and just he's a guy called John Campbell. You can Google him. He's getting more and more. It's quite dry factual stuff, but it's a
Yeah.
world away from all the emotive kind of stuff that's permeating main media, the main media at the moment. Because, like, I think it's terrible to expose yourself to that on a daily basis.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Um,
I think that's why also some people depress even just listening to this stuff for too much, too often, same bad news, you know. So where's the hope then, you know?
well, I mean that's really what we're talking about today is what you can do to improve your situation, and by getting healthier, you reduce your risk factor as well, and remaining sane is good, and
Hmm.
and exercise and all these things together. So yeah, just and for me, because you trained me in the gym
Hmm.
in Dublin, and I suppose I was a gym person after you had reprogrammed me, and I suppose it's about reprogramming me to become, I suppose, a home exerciser now,
Yeah,
which is kind of slightly different, but then ultimately, probably increases my physical education another little bit.
yeah,
Um, because I think you're very resourceful. You can change between different systems very easily, whereas, if I've been doing something in a certain way and then you put me in a completely different environment, I think it takes me longer to adapt.
yeah.
Um, you
Well,
know.
like I always think about exercise, pattern of movements, cycles, repetitions, challenge, intensity, volume, density, all sorts of factors, tempo, recovery times.
Mm,
Seeing the especially like trying to assess the needs of each individual client that I have and see,
mm,
okay, this is who they are, this is where they are, this is where they want to go. How
mm,
can I help them to go step one, step two, and get them towards a direction? And I actually realize more and more than rather than pushing people really hard, I'm trying to make them sort of working hard enough, but not too hard so they can enjoy it. And then gradually just to push them so they can see the progress and get the motivation. So then obviously if you bring somebody through too much pain, too much suffering,
mm.
they might quit. They might say, "Look, this is too much. This is not for me. I'm not built for that. I'm not top athlete. What does this guy, expect from me?" So I need to adapt.
Particularly at
So
the beginning when
yeah,
you're coming from an unhealthy lifestyle. I mean, you're very. I remember the early days. You're very. I think you're quite smart in that you start slow and build up the confidence in the routine, and then like people become familiar with the routine, and then once you've drilled that initial routine into people, then they're a lot stronger than when you intensify the regime later on.
well, you see, one thing is that I don't want my clients to get injured. I'm getting injuries actually quite often, overtraining, doing too much, too hard. And you
Mm,
see, with my clients, I'm a little bit smarter. It's like I'm outside of my ego. When I'm training, I try to go like in my head. I'm just trying to go, okay, destroy the session. With my
mm,
clients, I'm more like, okay, think about long term, be careful with them, and just see where they are, and so they can enjoy it. But for many people, it's building the pattern of movement. So even if they do certain exercises,
mm.
such as bent over rows, squats, deadlifts, which requires they require by the form, by the posture. Not many people, not every person has that. They don't know exactly how to move in the correct way, so they have certain habits. So initially, first maybe 2-3 weeks is just to make sure I reprogram their pattern of movement. So
Mm.
therefore, when you start adding more and more load on their body, more intensity, more density of the training, they are not actually doing damage to their tendons, their spine, their discs. So for me, it's actually making people ready for the intensity. So that's why I'm carefully, really observing their levels of progress, their weak spots, their strong spots, and see how can I quickly move them to the next level.
And your enthusiasm as well is contagious, and like that's something that then feeds back into COVID, because if you're around
Yeah.
anxious people, that's also contagious. And I think like one of the things to do during this period is to, as much as possible, have people around you who are enablers or people who calm you or fortify your positive mindset during this period. That you avoid people who are naturally make you even more anxious if you can.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Obviously, if you're in a house with your family, you can't really, but you can certainly, I suppose, tiptoe around each other a bit more and avoid pressing each other's buttons.
Oh, of
you know?
course, of course. Well, this actually brings us to the next level, which is the mental well-being, how to deal with stress. So, you how did you feel before you contacted me? You had the big lockdown. It was a months going on. You were big into your gym. I remember when you said you were looking for the apartment or house in the area where there was a gym close by so you can use it. So you were very enthusiastic. You really planned your lifestyle. I could see your huge emphasis to that quality of life, that there's a gym, there's exercise routine, and then it was closed. So how did you feel then?
Well, ultimately, that when I first moved to Edinburgh, yeah, I checked out the gyms, and like the thing is, you know, as many of your clients know, I suppose, gym becomes less of an obligation and more something that you look forward to with time. And that was pretty much, I think, what engaging with you had given me a structure, and then I started to make progress, and that progress then, you know, fed back into more enthusiasm. But when I came here and like, yeah, a lovely gym, but then when it shut because of COVID, there was this, I suppose, feeling of, well, this is one of the mainstays by how I stress manage and, you know, how I remain grounded and centered. I really, you know, I need to get something like it back into my life again. So like I was going for lots of walks. So, you know, between 10 and 20K a day, but it wasn't really giving me, you know, it was obviously good, it was healthy, it was keeping me going, but you know, there was no endorphin release, so to speak. You know, it was good aerobic exercise, but it didn't give me the whole jazz, you know,
Yeah,
you know, you have a good
yeah,
session.
yeah, yeah,
And I was also cognizant of the fact that it was all pretty low intensity stuff.
yeah,
And you know, you always feel that part of health is doing high intensity work intermittently. And because, you know, normally I would work in an NHS building, so like you know, a building where there's, you know, healthcare provision. You know, in my case, I work in the same building as all the, you know, blood transfusion products in Scotland, where they're manufactured.
yeah,
And basically, in my workplace, anybody who wasn't directly involved in frontline service provision worked from home. So not only was I working from home, and I'm a single guy, so I'm living on my own, but also, you know, I was working from home. So, you know, I spent a few months kind of struggling to adapt to working from home. And then once I got that down, I was, you know, thinking, okay, how can I improve just general stress manage, resilience, that kind of stuff, because this thing is going to go on. Like I early on with the lockdowns, I looked at what happened with Spanish flu,
yeah.
and you know, in Spanish flu, you know, there was a first wave, and then there was quite a serious second wave,
Dangerous
and then
one.
a much smaller third wave.
It just
So
came away, you know, went away on its own, basically. Mutated, basically.
yeah, I just kind of like it took its course, and you know, there back that, you know, it's very interesting because all the same sociological problems, economic problems as we're seeing now, you know, they're manifesting themselves in a very similar way.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I think one of the things that is probably one of the biggest things is to get a hold on what you're going through and give yourself some sort of roadmap to get through to a specific date. So, you know, having a goal, like for me, if Spanish flu and COVID play out in the same pattern, which I think they will, that really April next year for people in Ireland is probably a realistic goal to have, you know, because then it'll be coming into spring, summer, more time outside,
yeah,
but also even more time will have been developed to see how these vaccines are doing, and there's already huge steps forward in terms of treatment. But you know, that said, it takes a while for something that's good in the lab to be translated so that it can service large numbers of people.
yeah,
So that takes time of
The
itself.
trials and make sure the safety of it it's approved, that is verified by time and enough people. So is there any progress in research?
Yeah, there's a lot, but like before we go dip into the research, like the first thing is to remain away from other people. And that is by far and away the most effective way of stopping the virus being transmitted. You obviously have to wash your hands because we touch our faces all the time. And, in addition to that, then face masks are also really important to trap droplets and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it is important. Like it does seem, you're talking to people and they're saying, yeah, but it's going to be with us for a while, so why bother and stuff like that. I think, if you've ever been in an intensive care ward, either, with a loved one or, God forbid yourself, there are places that you don't want to go. And at the moment, if you've got severe COVID, that's where you'll end up, or that's where your loved ones will end up. And the thing is, the number of intensive care beds is actually quite small compared to the number of new cases with COVID. So if it's not managed at a population perspective, then those intensive care beds fill up very quickly, and then you're a person with severe symptoms that can't get access to key pieces of
Yeah.
equipment. And I think, I'm talking to some friends, and because they know people who maybe have very slight symptoms or asymptomatic,
Yeah.
they think this is all complete overkill. But when you actually look and you have, visibility on the healthcare infrastructure, there's only a very small amount of space for control,
Yeah.
and we can easily, if it slips out of control, if people get complacent, then it goes from being an inconvenience or a serious matter where people are losing jobs to something even more serious where people are dying in large numbers.
A proper
And
pandemic.
you can
Yeah.
you can rely on your friends and get through a period of not having money, but at least you'll be able to come out of it the other end and rebuild. And it's important to put things in perspective. This
So
isn't.
this is the health versus the money, the lives versus inconvenience of, let's say, the general public.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think for me, everyone takes their own life lessons. For me, when I was young, when I was a kid, like 8 or 9, or during their teens, I had very bad asthma. So I'm very, very conscious of what it's like. If you get particularly heavy strain of, or a severe case of COVID, you have lots of really very bad breathing problems,
So the
and
asthma
that's
would
why.
overemphasize it as well. Yeah. So
Yeah, and it's just trust me, it's an anxiety that's much worse than just staying away from people or staying at home.
I
If you're
see.
fighting for every breath, it's a constant
Of
nightmare.
course, of
And
course.
and like the thing is, you can have a selfish mindset, like I just don't want this grief in my life, and this is going to go on for a few months. But as with everything in life, change is guaranteed. So just wait a while. The scientists are doing their thing, the clinicians are doing their thing, and there's even the intensive care wards are becoming more suited to this kind of
Yeah.
endeavor. But I was talking to a few clinician friends during the week. There's huge fatigue in specific areas of the health system, and actually one of the key things is getting the nurses that work in intensive care wards to look after their own health.
Yeah.
They literally, you hear terrible stories about, when you work in intensive care, you're used to seeing a certain level of death. But the numbers that they're seeing as a routine, is really quite, draining and emotionally,
Yeah.
exacerbating. So that even though they're trained and they're solid professionals, if you're led with high intensity work where people are dying around you every day, it has an enormous cost.
Hmm.
So, so you either, if you're not protective of your enough of
Yeah.
yourself, think of the poor nurse or doctor working in intensive
Well,
care.
even they can get it, especially if their immune system is down because they have lack of sleep due to, you know,
Yeah,
overtimes, and also stress. So
yeah,
obviously, they can get it and they can also die from it.
yeah. And you're like telling relatives of deaths. Imagine that. Like imagine the mental fortitude need to do that on a daily basis.
Yeah.
To let relatives know that you tried your best, but their loved one is gone. I mean, this is something akin to like a major train crash or something for people, but it's across the whole of the country or the whole of the world in this case. So, I think we should really front and foremost think of the poor people that are helping the sick at the moment,
Yeah.
and um, maybe we're in college, stuck in student dorms, or maybe we've lost our job, or maybe we're living on our savings.
Maybe
Uh,
the business is bankrupted now at this point, which a lot of businesses will be. So people
yeah,
will be sad, yeah. But like, for many people, it is basically a sacrifice for basically everyone else who is more vulnerable. And as I heard it before in the first lockdown, one guy was saying, "Look, you are not asked to go to the beaches of Normandy to fight Nazi regime. You're
yeah,
asked to stay home. You get paid, and you can watch your Netflix. You can so I
yeah.
mean, like, let's say England, Scotland, Ireland, we were well looked after. So we
Well, we're
could,
in, we're in the first world, and like we could be in India, or you could be in a particularly devastated part. Like I think that your life is as good or bad as as you believe it is. And if you have your health, this is like the old Irish expression, once your health is wealth. And
yeah,
I think you only really value something when it's gone. And the thing is to look after yourself or whatever. I think there's a degree, like I'm living in Britain here, and they've got the NHS, and they're used to having all these services for free. And in some ways, then the downside of that is people become, I suppose, blasé about their own health and about the role that they have to take responsibility for their own health as well. And I think we all have to look after ourselves so that we can take care of other people around us. You know,
that's right.
and I think we're not much use to other people if we're sick. You know, so
So it's a
um,
different world we live in now. Now, a couple of different questions, slightly going into a different sort of aspect of our conversation here. One was you mentioned, actually, I made a few notes. You mentioned it's important we structure our day. It's important we have sense of progress. You mentioned the guy in the concentration camp who had his routine. So all of that. Can you talk about that a little bit?
So whenever I enter into a new phase of my life, I tend to read around what other people have done previously in a different kind of situation. So like I read around the Spanish flu, and then because I'm self-contained here in my apartment, um, I'm in the life I had last year. Like I was always traveling. I was going to conferences and maybe 2 to 3 weeks of every month. So I was doing a lot of air travel and a lot of speaking to different people. And then when I was sitting in my office and COVID was getting closer and closer. We knew colleagues in Korea and Japan and China, and they were being affected, but it seemed still quite far away in February. And then in March, I was just talking to a cousin who's a GP, and she basically said, "This is the real deal. It's here. You got to start taking it really seriously." And so, my boss had said to me that day, you should maybe start working from home. And I was very resistant. But then once the cousin said that, the cousin's not prone to over exaggeration. I said, yeah, it's a small price to pay. So for me, living at home, being an extrovert, and naturally being used to being stimulated by travel, by meeting lots of different people, there was an adaptation phase where I had to wean myself off that and adjust to my new life. And routine was a very important part of that. So, like, the day I came home from lockdown and did some research, I started structuring my day, and it was completely, now I look back on it, it was a very, I suppose, optimistic scheduling. I was going to do this, 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 and I had a drill and lights out by a certain amount of time, and I was trying to, maintain performance of work and then get exercise. But I wasn't used to exercising from home, and then back then you could still visit like coffee shops. So I was kind of going and interacting with people in local coffee shops, having a
Yeah.
coffee, saying hi to people and stuff like that. But I knew from previous experience that there are periods where you don't know where your life is going, and the human brain is not engineered to deal with I don't know what's happening. You need to build a structure into your day so that it calms you, and okay, I'm gonna work on my paper for an hour, or I'm gonna play a musical instrument for an hour, and then I'm gonna do exercise, and then I'm gonna go out for a walk, and then I'm gonna meet my friend, because a large part of life is about anticipation of positive events.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you don't know what you do, you're going to stay in bed, and then you're going to be in a bad
Pointless.
spiral of worrying about things that you
Yeah.
can't control,
So you
or
can
maybe
actually more likely to get into a negative thought pattern as well.
yeah, and especially if you're like consuming lots of media, like politics, and
Yeah.
you're reading these stories that are designed to outrage you. So you're
It's
reading
true.
about somebody breaking the quarantine, or people getting angry, and all that stuff. You're not being
Protests
paid to digest.
everywhere.
Yeah, and there's too much drama in the world at the moment already. But
So
yeah,
it's
I
good
mean,
to switch it off sometimes, just not to consume that, especially not in excess.
well, the thing is, everybody's different, but I think you need to know what's good for you. I think one of the things, in particular with the lockdown, you have to be careful what you lean on. You have
There's
to
lots
be
of
careful.
conspiracy theories going on. They flourish like mushrooms after rain.
Yeah, well, I mean, in some ways, you can understand that from a psychological point of view, because here's this virus that we've no real control over, right? Um, but if it's the government trying to oppress us, that's people trying to oppress us. That's somehow more controllable than, say, a new biological element that we
Yeah.
have to stay inside for. So the conspiracy theories, I think, they'll always come out, and they're just a natural defense mechanism, because
Yeah.
they make people feel like they've got more control than they actually do. And
It's
I
easy
think,
to blame someone, say this is how it is.
yeah, and it's their fault. And if we just got rid of them, then the problem would evaporate. And I think
Magically.
you just have to look
Yeah.
across in America. People are polarizing when the correct way, or the most efficient way is the middle way. So it's like you either do no training, or you completely overtrain to injury. What you want is that sweet spot in the
Yeah.
middle.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think this comes back to being around people who are supportive of a positive state. Where possible. Like, you have to be careful more than normal who you let into your circle of influence.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, so like basically, while going walking, I didn't have that extra element of high intensity exercise. And then I remembered, like, I was very skeptical
And you
that
text
actually
me.
you could train somebody effectively through Zoom or through,
We do
Skype.
WhatsApp calls. Yeah, we do WhatsApp calls. So, do you think it takes a lot from one-on-one to have a instead of being in the gym or being anywhere, let's say in a park, whatever? Do you think it takes that much away from the quality of the session when it's just online?
I think I anticipated that would be the case, but given the amount perspiring and
You're
ultimately
dripping the sweat, man.
developing, well, that's the real litmus test. Is like,
Yeah,
can you see progress, and is your body doing a lot of work, and you can be quite subjective, but your body will tell you how much it's doing by, heart rate, sweat, that kind of stuff.
yeah.
And, I think that's the real barometer, or, the metric that you should be following. But I think one of the key things that you introduced me to were the things like early on was the resistance bands, which are actually really quite cheap. You can buy them on Amazon for,
20 euro,
I think,
20,
yeah.
20 pounds. Yeah,
And we've done so much with that, of its own. And it's
yeah.
like, it's not like you need to buy all the equipment that you see in the gym, and
But you're getting
completely.
dumbbells, you're getting few kettlebells, so you over those weeks and weeks and weeks, you start to getting sets of 10 kilo dumbbells, then set of 25 kilo kettlebells. You have some bags you can use, so you actually investing now. You know this is gonna be here for a while, and a lot of people do that. They start buying equipment for home, and then you have the equipment, but many people actually they need to be a little pushed. They need to be a little motivated. They need a little bit companion for the workout. And I
Well,
think
like,
I
yeah,
think that's why online it works as well,
yeah.
because it's the connection, it's the mind to mind connection. Me helping you, motivating you, educating you. We put a
Mm,
commitment. Say okay, at that time of that these days we're gonna train, and you anticipate it as well. And then you have also during the week you will anticipate. Okay, I'm gonna come for that session, so you'll be more
mm,
focused on your diet, more focused on additional exercise and activities. So what
mm.
what do you say?
Yeah, I mean that's exactly it. I suppose the one thing is I was making a commitment, by hiring your services, and then there was a structure, because there'd be certain points of the week that would be, Otto's going to train me at these points, and then it starts a positive feedback, because actually, we gone through a period where I was actually just I had very little social interaction with people, apart from work.
That could be
And
just emails, which is also non-personal as much.
yeah, and we're monkeys, so we need some sort of physical experience in our lives. We can't just be purely intellectual. Um, the thing is, like, if you forget about the physical side of who you are, the mental side of you, even if it's operating initially at a very high level, over time it'll start to go down as well. And I felt that really, I needed to, I was thinking about, oh, maybe I should save money, and then when I, can do all the traveling when I come out of this. But actually, this is a pretty major crisis.
Yeah.
So you don't want to be trying to build up your stores in the middle of a major crisis. So I said, okay, I'm going to do this, this, and this. It's going to cost me a little bit more a month, but it's going to keep me sane during this period. So, yeah, and you trained me before, so you were a friend,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
you knew my weak spots and my strengths.
yeah.
Like, so I think that also helps even more if you have like, if you have a previous history with the person training you. I wonder sometimes how effective we would have been if, say, I didn't know you.
Yeah, I'm sure we would
Certainly,
build a way. I'm sure we
yeah,
would build a way. I think it's just like any relationship. It's evolving on based on what's there in front of you. So if it's the personal contact, and you know that's what it was. But I'm sure it's possible for anyone if they find a trainer
yeah,
who can, you know, have an empathy with them, and being able to really truly help them, and
Yeah.
sort of trying to build a connection, then I think for many people it is just to get started,
Yeah.
keep moving, keep progressing, and as you say, the progress makes the sense of happiness as well, a sense of
Yeah.
purpose. You're waking up from the bed and say, okay, wow, okay, I have a reason to live. I have reason to wake
Yeah.
up and do stuff. So I think having that sort of encouragement to that sort of full life. So you see,
Mm.
my big focus is not just helping people lose weight, and in
Mm.
fact, many people lose very small weight. It's
Mm.
really I want to get into their head so they are very motivated to do it for themselves,
Yeah.
because don't control what they put into their mouth. I
Yeah.
can tell them, do this amount of squat, do this, and yeah, that's a one aspect of it. And it's actually, if you think about your whole day, like, I mean, if you don't get that sort of inner drive, you can sabotage it immediately by raiding the fridge, opening a bottle of wine, eating whole chocolate, So for me,
Alcohol, bad
alcohol,
relationships.
bad
Yeah.
relationships. So for me, actually, the main goal is to get into people's head and make them sort of enjoy it, and just kind of encourage them, educate them, motivate them, anything just to make them want it.
Mm. I mean, the key thing, I suppose, if you're selecting somebody to train you virtually, you have to have a sense that they know what particular, that they understand you emotionally as well as from, I suppose, a fitness point of view. I think if there's like if you have a common energy, that helps a lot. I
Oh yeah,
think because then
absolutely.
yeah, and like I think, yeah. So when we started training, so I'd been, a few months away from the gym, and I suppose that one of the benefits of being away from the gym is that you really see an improvement then quite quickly
You
when you do start.
lost lots of fitness.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's like you're an astronaut in space, and then you come back down to Earth, and you start trying to walk around again, and yeah, like there was stabilizer muscles and just getting up off the floor
Absolutely.
or getting out of bed. And the thing is, once the sessions have begun, you realize this is the best money I've ever spent. This is really good in so many different levels because I have a sense of traction, I have a sense of control. I'm getting fitter, and be better able to deal with the COVID if it ever comes along,
Yeah.
and my mood is better. And if you're living alone, it's some sort of social interaction,
Yeah.
which with all these kind of things are ticking many boxes. And oh, it really, I didn't think it was going to work as well as it did. I thought it would be like just like a phone the other end of the room, and
And
you
you know
know,
what? I knew it's gonna work. I
yeah,
knew straight ahead. Like, sometimes I talk to people with such a confidence because I know it's gonna work, because I trained thousands of people, not
yeah,
the hundreds, thousands of people, and I know already. Like, when I talk to someone, look, you just need to stick with it, and it's gonna work.
yeah,
We're gonna make it work, and I'm so confident because I see it every time. I see people basically getting really, really interested to improve their physique, their mindset, their technique in exercise, and sort of like helping with any other part of their life. That's why I always ask how they're doing, and not just physically, but how they feel, how they sleep, how is their
mm,
energy, how's their, if they have food addictions, how is that doing.
yeah,
So I'm
yeah, yeah,
trying to sort of create connection where they sort of like a therapy where, as a therapist, you just listen and they self answer, and then they self resolve as well. You
yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, like a good friend, a good personal trainer will be a mirror to you as well. So you get a kind of like, especially like if you're living on your own, you lose the capacity to uh, baseline yourself relative to other people around you. So, and then that's quite a, like all my gym friends I didn't have access to. So I was basically left with kind of coffee shop
Yeah.
acquaintances and friends, and they might do a bit of yoga, but that's it. And it's just kind of like that wasn't going to float my boat. Like I wasn't made to to just do yoga and walk. Like I need to throw something around and, you
Yeah,
know,
it's
get
huge, especially I'd say you had quite a weight to lose, and
yeah.
that's why walking wouldn't cut it. So
No,
high intensity or some sort of a proper workout where you train at a high level rather
yeah,
than just your light resistance, light easy stuff. That's
yeah,
why for certain people, let's say like you're strong, you
yeah.
actually I'd say in many areas you're way stronger than me. That's why
Okay.
we try to emphasize your legs, for example, because you have such a strong legs, and I can see how you have your 38 kilo bag, the
Yeah,
wrestling bag you can put on your back, and
yeah,
you were doing 20 squats, you were done. Now
yeah,
you do 3 sets of 80, which
yeah.
basically last time I choose 40 kilo bar and I
Yeah.
was doing squats. I'm like, there's no way I can do 80 reps myself. But you
Yeah.
train
Well,
yourself because we look for what you can do with what equipment you have and see, okay, you're starting with this equipment, with this weight, and you're
mm,
starting from here and you're rising and you're rising and you're rising and you're rising.
and like everyone gets off on doing stuff that they feel they're good at. So, I think, when you're re-entering any sort of fitness program, and if you have a particular strength, to engage that strength at the beginning really gives you a huge
Motivation?
enthusiasm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Enthusiasm. I always ask people when they ask me to do a program for them, I'm like,
Mm.
what exercise do you like? And then
Yeah.
I ask them, let's say, what they currently do, what they are familiar with, and then just trying to sort of make it a little more fresh, but still keep it around the basis of exercise they actually enjoy. If somebody is cardio person and they love cardio, I wouldn't give them mostly weights because they
Mm.
love
Mm.
cardio. So it's like listen, every trainer they have to listen to their clients, see look what their needs are, what their desires, and sometimes due to education, you can actually help people understand why they should be doing something
Mm.
different, but
Mm.
not just what they are comfortable with, what they love, because sometimes what they love is something they are either good at or it's comfortable for them enough to do. So actually moving them into areas they're not as familiar with, and it's first you have that resistance. Okay, I'm not good at it. I need to build technique. I'm not strong enough, and then you start to grow, and then so okay, you build that aspect of your fitness. Let's say like stabilization, balancing on one leg while you do exercises.
Mm.
And for example, a lot of people sit these days, work at their home offices, so
Mm.
their hip stabilizers, so abductors, the glute minimus and medius, are
Mm.
actually underactive. They're lazy.
Yeah.
The back is not working enough for abdominal, so they're basically getting a lot of back pain, upper back, lower back, and
Mm.
they're basically stiffening up, sitting so much. So my first goal is always to make sure that these muscles are activated again and they're
Mm.
stronger enough so when they do a little bit more of strength, they don't actually hurt themselves.
And they're the kind of the stabilizer muscles that are particularly important as you get older, because they're the
Yeah,
ones that will keep you, standing when you step on a loose cobblestone or
yeah,
that kind of
yeah.
stuff. The reactive
Yeah.
kind of muscle.
I even have a client who she's 65, 66 almost,
Mm.
and she fell. She slipped somewhere on her holiday, or dog
Mm.
tripped her over, and you know what? She never broke anything. She has
Mm.
so much more strength that her friends are asking her, "How come?" Like they're literally intrigued. How come she never broke anything? She just fell so badly and nothing, just bruises, but nothing broken. So it shows also that the bone density is
Yes.
improving. You know,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's the world we live in. Like I really enjoy when I can help someone to better themselves in a way they feel, because to be honest, like
Yeah.
when I was younger I was going through depressions myself, and I
Yeah.
think the exercise, I used to play sports, play football, I used to do martial arts, I was doing gym. For me that was always the way to release my tension.
Yeah, 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 exactly. The release, like the key thing is, I saw what a lot of people don't get about weights and stuff is while you're under a lot of tension when you're lifting something, the complete relaxation when you're leaving the gym, all the tension is gone, and you got your endorphin rush, and you
Yeah.
just feel so good afterwards
Yeah. Yeah.
that, you know.
Well, you feel sore, you feel tired, but then eventually there's a bit of calmness in it. You go, okay, you just sit down, have your snack or whatever just to get your energy back. And, you know, it actually sets your mind and body for other challenges. So basically, the stress
Mm,
that we have, physical stress, the nervous system stress, will
mm,
actually somehow improve the mental stress ability. And this is actually what
mm,
we wanted to say, how during the lockdown, during the COVID-19, all the sort of negative information, how people can take their well-being to their hands. So our recommendation is start exercising, no matter what it is. If you walk up and down in your room doing push-ups, planks, if you go for a jog outside.
So this is one of the things you mentioned earlier. I read a book about a guy who was put in solitary confinement. He was captured as a POW, like a
Mm-hmm.
prisoner of war, and he was kept for years in solitary confinement.
That's
And
tough.
when he got out, he was still sane. So there was obviously a lot of psychologists very interested in how he managed to maintain his mental integrity during, that kind of incarceration and deprivation of stimulation. And basically what he was doing was he started setting himself little tasks, and then he would do a little bit more of that task every day. So it'd be like walking up and down, his 6 by 12 cell or whatever it was, or doing more sit-ups, or he would like sketch on the walls of the cell and get better at that. And I think that's really, the traction of improvement is something that's very calming to the human spirit. And even if it's only a small incremental improvement with time, just that there's something very natural about
Bit of
that.
dopamine, isn't it? The
Yeah,
satisfaction from completing a task. You set yourself
yeah,
a task. That's why, having lists. I said, this is what I'm gonna do today, and as you're writing you're making clear what you're gonna do, and then
yeah,
scratching it off like that's done. I personally do that. It helps me to be productive because otherwise my mind goes all over the place, and I
yeah,
actually don't do anything. I'm just kind of
yeah,
browsing around the internet, and I don't. It's purposely, scrolling
yeah,
through YouTube videos, watching useless stuff, and
yeah.
sometimes I need a structure. I need a list, and then I go, okay, there's my list here beside my computers, and basically I go, and this is my stuff which I would forget about. So I go
Mm,
through the list, and as I complete them, scratch
mm,
them off, and especially when I had to throw that away, I was like, okay,
mm,
wow, I completed what I wanted today. So I feel successful. I feel like, okay, now I can realize I can go play my game. You know?
I mean, so some people seem to do this naturally. They might do it through their work, or they might do it through, doing regular housework and keeping their flat or apartment or house in order. Um, but sometimes when people are, when they're put into a new environment, or there's a change like this pandemic, I suppose they don't realize they need to relearn certain things, or to reestablish a framework on their lives so that
Yeah.
they can, it's like, when you do deep sea diving and you get concussed. um, they train deep sea divers to look for where the bubbles are going, and that's up.
Yeah.
Because if you're on low oxygen or you're concussed, you might know which way is up because you're in the darkness or
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
And
Confusion.
so
Yeah.
I think the key thing is that you need to take action, even if it's not the right action. Just the whole first step of taking the first step, it empowers you. You've taken that step, and then that'll give a positive kind of feedback
Yeah.
loop, and you'll start finding things better. And I think that's the key thing, that you need to have a hobby or a focus, and something to sustain. Like, for example, for me, apart from the training, I also said, okay, I'm going to be here a few months. I'm going to be predominantly on my own. I'm going to learn a musical instrument.
So you have the ukulele, yeah?
Yeah, I decided to learn the ukulele. So, but I took it very seriously. I said I'm gonna study a bit of music
And it
theory.
sounds good, man. You sent it to me, and so it's amazing how you can pick a new hobby and just put some energy into it, and so
Yeah.
every skill, everything is sort of like little bits and pieces, and eventually they sort of like a synergy, and they just basically help you with other skills as well. So, for example, music that could be sort of like calming your emotions, focusing your mind, feeling
Well, like
good aspect.
one of the key things for me is like I have a sense of impotence in that my family is in Ireland, and some of my family tested positive for COVID. So this was a very stressful situation, whether they were going to get severe COVID or whether they were going
Are
to
they
be
okay?
asymptomatic. But I was able to, I suppose, send some ukulele tunes across on the phone,
Yeah.
and just kind of communicate a support through just a bit of like, a frivolous hobby that I picked up, and that actually made me feel a lot more empowered. There's kind of, I wasn't trying to phone people to find out what the situation was, but I was, being nurturing through something that I'd started with myself, and again, it's another segment of my day that's marked away, and I can record it, and I can see, okay, I'm much better at that song now than I was 2 weeks ago,
Interesting.
or so like, and that it's quite funny because at one stage, I was playing my ukulele here, and then there's another neighbor across the street who's learning saxophone,
You
and
make a band, yeah?
you can hear him getting better, or her. I don't know if it's him or her, but they were brutal at the beginning. So
Yeah.
like, now is a good time to pick up a musical instrument because everyone's in isolation, and
Yeah. It could
but
be
like,
any
to
it
be
could be
learning a
any hobby.
language.
It could be any
Yeah,
hobby, language, whatever. Like I even told some people, it was a bit sarcastic. It's like, well, they would say, "Oh, I'll be so bored." I was like, "Well, why don't you pick a computer game or Xbox or PlayStation game?
yeah,
Why don't you get a game that makes you think and makes you busy as
yeah,
well, so you have a sense of progress?" Sometimes people think computer games are just for kids, but if
yeah,
you play a game that is demanding on your logical power, trust me, you'll be sweating to solve the problem and actually progress in the game, because you have to learn the physics, you have to learn the rules, you have to learn what it is. And so it's actually, for me, computer games always being very mentally stimulating. Of course, you can do the repetitive stuff, which is pretty boring, but I like the
yeah.
stuff that you can improve and see the sense of progress.
When I would play video games for longer than half an hour or half or an hour, I just get a lot of tension in my body. Like, I know you play a lot of the racing games and stuff,
You do, yeah.
but you also go to the gym, or well, you seriously exercise,
Yeah.
which takes away all that tension.
Yeah, like today,
So,
today I was at a computer. I was working on a website. I also designed websites. I was
right,
fixing few things for a few people, working with a
yeah,
technical support. And I was sitting here for like maybe 2, 3 hours, maybe 3 hours. My back felt really tense. I used a
yeah,
massage gun. It loosened it up a little bit because I can use it on myself. Here I have it beside my desk. So basically, I turn this on, massage my back, shoulder blades, because a lot of tension comes to the back. And then I'm like, you know what? Sudden motivation, because obviously I listen to the fearless motivation just to program my mind for action and progress. And it's a
mm,
positive programming. That's why, at some point I was addicted to the negative news. I used the
yeah,
positive stuff, and, it makes huge difference. I just suddenly realized, okay, I was off yesterday because I was sore, so I just jump up and went to the park and did a body combat class, sweating for 1 hour. Came
mm,
home, take a shower, have a meal, and I feel so much better. And then I played a little
mm,
bit, played half an hour or whatever, and then went back to be productive. So it's good to have that structure, being able to
yeah,
have choices rather
mm,
than choice number one, watch TV. Choice number two, watch more TV. Sitting,
mm,
sitting, 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 watching, and being very passive. Like, you see the hours going by, you don't even want to go
yeah,
sleep. You start watching YouTube, you start watching movies, and you realize it's 2 o'clock in the morning. Your structure, because a lot of people will be off work now for a couple of weeks.
yeah.
So that's sometimes the dark side of it, that they actually become lazy, lethargic, and gradually becoming overweight, becoming really demotivated and depressed.
Well, I think the key thing is focus. Like focus on something that's active. And what I mean by active is like, whether it's computer games or,
Environment.
musical instrument or your training, um, that you're actively engaged with it. Because if you're passively just being entertained with the Netflix has its place. Like we all recover
Oh yeah,
sometimes by watching a movie or something like that.
yeah,
But if you're not, that we're in a situation now where it's good to do things that empower us in some way or focus nervous energy in some way,
yeah.
and like the
Getting rid of
camera,
the tension, basically.
yeah, yeah.
Mental,
But
physical, emotional, all the tension, being able to direct into some sort of action. Yeah.
I suppose, okay, so that's the exercise component of it, and we've talked a little bit about the psychology and I suppose not having access to family or friends. I mean, I think for the hardest thing that I've encountered is in people that I know are people who have either lost loved ones or who have elderly parents
Okay.
and they can't engage them. So, like, or if my heart really went out to people who lost family relatives and couldn't attend the funeral or attended the funeral in a way that was, very alien in that, like, people standing distance apart. And, I think, I think we can feel that we're all quite alone during this period, but actually, in reality, we're all in it together. And there are unfortunately some things that we can't do, but we are human, and part of the problem with being human, I suppose, is that we can't do everything we want to do. That there are limits to what we can do, and we can't will our parents if they're sick, we can't will them well, or someone has died, we can't will them back to life, and it's to accept that
Yeah.
ultimately, and that not to start being overly self-critical just because you can't do something that no human can do.
Yeah.
So I think there is apart from focus and in having something to occupy your mind, there are some of these situations that are quite severe, and you need to realize that, oh my God, that's really pushing a very big boulder up a hill. I need to be very gentle with myself and supportive of myself, because what I'm trying to achieve in these kind of in this kind of very difficult situation is something that most human beings can't. So I think it's important to, if you come up against a major life event during this period, that you are good to yourself. But it all feeds back to trying to build a routine, getting back to basics, good sleep, good nutrition, good exercise. And,
Yeah.
even if parts of your life are falling apart, if you take care of the basics, with every day you'll get a little bit stronger. And, with that strength, then you'll be better able to see life for what it fully is as opposed to what's just in front of you right now, you know?
Very wise. Well said. And I was just saying, like, look, maybe this is a blessing as well. That sort of world pandemic to eventually end up wiser and stronger. And sort of,
Yeah,
it's also for the nature. It's one of the best ecological thing that happened. No
yeah,
more, no, not so many flights, cruise ships, trucks, cars. So we
yeah.
actually taking a little break from actually taking from the planet as much. So from one
Mm,
aspect, if we think the balance of the earth, if it's like ecosystem and we are part of it, we're connected to the nature.
mm.
So maybe that's the way the nature controls its own environment by sending like sending viruses to depopulate certain species so they don't overgrow and they don't keep going with actions. Who knows? Maybe there's some sort of intelligence. Who am I to say? But maybe there is something like that.
Well, I think that, natural selection, the more you have of any organism, the greater the probability that a parasite will come and attack that particular organism, because it's the more people you have, the more opportunities you have for human pathogens.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think if you look at how much, like, if you compare this to the Spanish flu,
Yeah.
we have this technology now, the internet technology, and people are sharing medical information. So, I know how many deaths there were in China yesterday. And, that's a good thing and a bad thing. If I'm a medical researcher and I'm developing a vaccine or I'm plotting the course of the disease, then it can be a really good thing. But the danger then could be you can get too much of a good thing and overload yourself. It's important to fill your consciousness with things that give you a positive frame of mind. So we need to have a selection, a selective input. We have to have a selective information input or diet.
Yeah.
you know, um, and we need to look out for each other as well. I mean, one of the things a few years back I did, like, the Camino, in Spain,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you're walking for hundreds of miles, and you pull in, and you live in these dormitories, and at the beginning of the Camino you're completely self-obsessed, and but then as time goes on and you're living in these dormitories, you become aware that, your feet are killing you, but then you become aware that everybody's feet are killing them. And it's part of human nature to realize that if everyone else is suffering like I'm suffering, my suffering is more bearable. And
True.
I think the key thing, because we all kind of like manage ourselves
We're in it
relative.
together. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the the nature of this kind of pandemic is a lot of people aren't seeing the suffering that's going on behind closed doors, and you might see people being more aggressive,
Yeah.
displaying more stress behaviors, but that really is coming from a place of insecurity.
Fear.
So,
Yeah.
so the person that moderately annoyed you in the past is now really, really, really annoying. Like that, the family member who talks too much, they're really talking too much now, or like it's important to realize that you're not going to be as good interacting with other people because they'll be stressed out and you'll be stressed out. But also, you know, that other people are everybody else is struggling in a different way,
Yeah.
whether it's loneliness. I mean, one of the things here, I have a Welsh woman upstairs in her 70s, and we never said two words to each other before lockdown, and now I was on the phone to her the other night for like 93 minutes or something, and she's talking about growing up in Wales, like
Wow.
it's 60 years ago, and you see the humanity grows out of the cracks in the pavement if
Yeah.
you let it. It's
Yeah.
it's quite amazing
It
because
is.
you could be right next door to somebody who's fascinating, and you would be passing them every day in your day-to-day life, and it's only when a crisis like this, like, it's quite funny when people talk about the war, and like, they sometimes soldiers miss war because of the shared humanity that when they come back into normal society they don't have that anymore.
Yeah.
Everyone's an individual, and I think if we're going to take anything from positive from the COVID, it's like it's a chance to reconnect with other human
Yeah.
beings.
Yeah. You're right. Yeah.
You know,
Well said. So before we wrap it up, so we don't turn it into a marathon, we can do it
yeah,
again. But there was one thing we were talking about the other day, was the nutrition and supplementation. We were talking about vitamin D3, really
yeah,
important. Zinc was there, vitamin C,
yeah.
omega 3s. So what do you think scientifically proven methods to enhance your ability to protect yourself from COVID-19 or help to speed up the recovery?
So the two things that are very well characterized and will stop you getting the well, it will make you less likely to get the most severe forms of COVID. You take a bit of zinc and take a bit of vitamin D. So basically, fish and eggs. There's a lot of vitamin D in eggs, and
Hmm.
there's zinc in seafood. So
Would the supplement be as efficient as the real food?
Well, either or, but like I don't know. Personally speaking, if you give me a pill or a food, I would tend to choose the food just because it's cheaper. And um, and the food is pleasant. Taking a
Okay.
pill, it's like you could do it, but I
Is
like
there
the
is there enough vitamin D3 to cover most people needs in winter? Because we have lack of sunshine, let's say the angle of the sun, so we don't really absorb so much vitamin D3 through our skin.
yeah,
So
but
that maybe is a good time, maybe supplement a little bit.
yeah, I think yeah, or just get outside, you go for a swim in the ocean. Actually, that's one thing I would say is that I don't know about you, but personally speaking, cold showers are really good if you
Yeah,
find yourself
I use that.
getting if you find yourself getting down because of the long nights. Cold showers are amazingly effective
Helps
at kind of
circulation.
re-energizing,
Yeah, yeah,
and it kind of as cold as you can, but
yeah,
it
yeah,
kind of really stimulates the nervous system and stimulates the immune system as well. But
well,
yeah, like
well, you know what?
supplementation for sure.
Since I do cold showers, and that's maybe 12, 13 years, I
Yeah,
don't really get the seasonal colds and flus anymore.
yeah,
I actually feel like my immune system is better.
yeah. No, no, absolutely, and then particularly in like what I got into the cold showers after because Edinburgh is quite far north.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
sometimes you get very long, dark days in Edinburgh in the depths of winter. And cold showers just mitigates the black dog on days like that.
There we go.
You know,
So good.
uh,
So we cover a couple of good things. So I hope our listeners will take some good stuff from it. And is there any final word you have for our listeners?
well, I think just take care of each other. Obviously you're not used to anybody if you're sick yourself. So obviously look after yourself. Oh, the other one is tryptophan, dark chocolate. So
Okay,
women love
there we go.
hearing that dark chocolate is a
There we go. It's
prerequisite.
approved by Stephen, the
Yeah,
cellular biologist.
a bar of Bourneville a day keeps the doctor away.
There we go.
Yeah, no, but I think give yourself a break and take care of the people around you. I think there'd be the two things because you take care of people around you, they'll take care of you, and I think
It bounced back. It's like
yeah,
ping pong.
yeah, the whole thing about a reed can easily be broken on its own, but if it's fastened to other reeds, then no one can break it. And I think that's really true with this kind of, um, change in society. Like we can't go through it on our own. We need to go through it with the friendship of others, especially if you're living on your own,
Yeah, yeah.
So
Thank you, Stephen. Thanks so much for your time, for good, very valuable advices, and well,
yeah,
hopefully
the,
soon talk to you soon again about some interesting stuff.
excellent. Thanks, Odo.
Pleasure, as always.